Hello, it's me, Mike, with HPDS. This video will be a reading and study of Exodus chapter 18. Exodus chapter 18. So, as always, I'll go ahead and read. I'll read the Lord's Prayer as read from Matthew 6, 9 through about 13. So it reads, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. All right, so Exodus 18. If you remember, Exodus 17 was the rock of Horeb with the battle of Amalek and the battle of Amalek. And if you remember what that was, basically at the beginning they were murmuring for water again. And they were saying there's no water here. And, and I didn't think I even mentioned it in that video, Exodus 17, but that rock of Horeb, looking back on it, that's actually where Moses had seen the burning bush way back in like Exodus 3, I want to say. I think that was actually Horeb is where he saw the burning bush. And then, of course, later on when he went there with all the people, they didn't have any water there. And, God struck a stone, which is kind of interesting because there's a burning bush, a never-ending burning bush there. That was kind of back when he was, when he got to see those crazy miracles where his hand shriveled up and he was able to turn his cane into into a snake. So there's something to be said about that. And I didn't quite mention that in Exodus 17 at all, surprisingly, but I am mentioning it now. Remember, let's see. So he smited the rock of Horeb. Oh, and then he also had the battle with Amalek. So where Moses actually had to stand with his hands up during that whole time, because if he didn't, what ended up happening was they were losing the war. So they were losing the war while he had his hands down, and then they started winning the war as he had his hands up. And of course they had to have Joshua had to have some help from Joshua and her. And so anyway, that's written of that's 17. And remember, going on past or prior to that, we're past the crossing of the Red Sea. The Egyptian Pharaoh is completely dead. The 10 plagues have been done with. They're out of Egypt. They've gotten some manna. They've learned about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. They've learned about the Passover and how to celebrate the Passover in the future. And now we're going to be moving into Exodus 18. And so before I get started on that, obviously, I'll go ahead and show the little thing that I normally show. Here you go. Exodus 18, Moses takes Jethro's advice for judging the people. That's what this chapter is basically about. And what to look for in verses 1 through 6, we're going to see the visit by Jethro. And if you don't remember who Jethro is the priest of Midian. And I think he's also coming from Exodus 3. He's actually Moses' father-in-law. His daughter married Moses, and they had some children together. And then verses 7 through 12, we read God's deliverance. And then 13 to 16, we're going to see about how Moses acts as judge. And then verses 17 through 27, he's going to get some good advice from Jethro. So that's what we're going to be looking for in this chapter. And remember, Jethro comes from Exodus 3. And I'll talk about him later after I read this chapter. But of course, I'll go ahead and get into it. I'll do like I normally do, is I will read the whole full chapter of Exodus 18. And then afterwards, I'll reread it and kind of explain what's going on. And we'll see what the Holy Spirit brings to the conversation. So let me go ahead and get this started. Exodus 18. And it reads, when Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel his people, and that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he sent her back, and her 2 sons, of which the name of the one was Gershom, for he said, I have been an alien in a strange land. And the name of the other was Eleazar, for the God of my father, said he, was mine help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife unto Moses into the wilderness, where he encamped at the mount of God. And he said unto Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, am come unto thee, and thy wife and her 2 sons with her. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and did obeisance, and kissed him, and they asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. And Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done unto Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and all the travail that had come upon them by the way, and how the Lord delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who hath delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, for in the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God. And Aaron came, and all the elders of Israel, to eat bread with Moses, father-in-law, before God. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from the morning unto the evening. And when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, What is this thing that thou doest to the people? Why sittest thou thyself alone, and all the people stand by thee from morning unto even? And Moses said unto his father-in-law, Because the people come unto me to inquire of God. When they have a matter, they come unto me, and I judge between one and another, and I do make them know the statutes of God and his laws. And Moses' father-in-law said unto him, The thing that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away both thou and this people that is with thee. For this thing is too heavy for thee. Thou art not able to perform it thyself alone. Hearken now unto my voice. I will give thee counsel, and God shall be with thee. Be thou for the people to God ward, that thou mayest bring the causes unto God. And thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them, to be rulers of thousands and rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s and rulers of 10s. And let them judge the people at all seasons, and it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto thee, but every small matter that they shall judge. So shall it be easier for thyself, and they shall bear the burden with thee. If thou shalt do this thing, and God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure, and all this people shall also go to their place in peace. So Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law, and did all that he had said. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel, and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. And they judged the people at all seasons. The hard causes they brought unto Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way into his own land. So that is Exodus 18 in its entirety. Exodus 18. And once again, what we're looking for, there's a few things. Jethro visited. So verses 1 through 6, we see that the visit by Jethro. 7 through 12, we see God's deliverance. And that's interesting because Jethro, obviously, he's from Midian. And I'll bring up some maps here. You know what? I'll bring up some maps here in a little while. But he was the the priest for Midian. And Midian is a little bit off. It's a little bit south of Israel, but unlike the people of Amalek from chapter 17, the people of Amalek saw what was going on, and they came out and they attacked these people of Israel instead of helping them out. And I know there's some. I remember they were from the line, and actually, if we go through the line there, I believe he's actually from Esau's line. So remember from Genesis, Esau he hated. God says he hated Esau, and here's the Amalek, people of Amalek. No wonder why he hated them. Here they come. They come in like, when they, kicking a man when he's down is what I had said. And meanwhile, here comes Jethro from Midian, and he helps him out. So you see how there's two different. The people of Amalek should have helped him out too, but Jethro brings his Moses' wife and his children to him. And I remember making mention again. I've made mention a few times of the movie that was made about 5 years ago by, it has Christian Bale in it. It's called Exodus, like of Gods and Kings or something like that. And again, I don't promote it. I don't say you should study that because once again, in this book, it tells us that Jethro visits Moses, and he brings the wife and children to Moses. But in the book, in the movie, this, like I said, it's all backwards. In the movie, Christian Bale visits his wife. So, of course, they want to say it's artistic license and so forth, but really they've just not read the book, or they're really not studying it, because here it says that Jethro came to visit them, and in that movie, Moses takes all his people to them. It's the opposite, so it's just really, and like I said, you even showed that Moses went into the water in that movie, which is whatever. That's what they want to say. That's what I'm getting at. It's not quite accurate, those movies coming out of Hollywood. But what I'll go ahead and do again is I'll just straight read it up again, read through this, and we'll see what the Holy Spirit has to say, because the Holy Spirit is gonna walk me through this. Okay, so Exodus 18 again. It reads, like I said, verses 1 through 6, we're seeing Jethro's visit. So when Jethro, the priest of Midian, he heard of all that. So they heard too, just like the people of Amalek. They all knew what was going on with these. It was not a small thing. There was a lot of people. There was some like 600,000 men, remember, that come out of it. It was a big deal, big ordeal. The storms and all these great plagues had been heard about, and so here comes Jethro out of Midian, and let's take a look. If you remember where Midian is, you can see Midian in this picture right here. They're kind of right here, and so this is where they were at. Remember, they kind of came down here to this was Mara, a few chapters. They were around here, and they got attacked from these people from Amalek, which come from around here. If you could see this in the Zin Desert kind of place, I'm not really entirely sure. Doesn't show it exactly here, but Midian people come from here, and so they come from over here too to visit them. And that's not see, this map shows it, but let me show you this map. This map also shows Midian right here. So you could see this at Midian. They come. It's not too far of a journey for these guys, and they come, and what is Jethro? And if you remember Jethro, he comes, like I said, from Exodus 3. When after Moses had fled for murder in Egypt, for murdering an Egyptian, he fled, remember, and he went out to Midian, and he comes across some women trying to get some water. And again, it has to do with water, which is interesting. It's not the first time a man found his wife next to a well in this Bible book, but that's what happened here. Is Moses gave them, the woman, he got them water, and next thing you knew, they were asked, next thing you know, he's married to Jethro's daughter, and Jethro happens to be the priest out there in Midian. So obviously he took, and right here it says Moses' father-in-law took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back. So you see, he took her and her two sons, of which the name of one was Gershom, And so this name, once again, this is from earlier on in Exodus when Moses had his children before he went back, before he saw the burning bush, and before he went back to go, get these 10 plagues going. And so, and the name of the other was Eleazar, the God of my father. For the God of my father said he was mine help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. So you see, those are the two names he named him. One, I was an alien in a strange land, talking about Midian. And then he's also about Egypt, I guess, if you think about it. And also, he had this son that was named. They were both prophetic names. So that's what's interesting, is God's always giving them names and proving them later on. And that's exactly what happened. And their names were symbolic for what was going to happen to him. And sure enough, they happened to him. Let's see. And then it says, and Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife unto Moses into the wilderness, where he encamped at the Mount of God. And the Mount of God, I believe, is this Mount Sinai. You can see it better down here, Mount Sinai. So this, I think, they come from Midian somewhere, and they come into this Mount Sinai place. So that's where they come to visit him. Okay, and like I said, in the movie, it shows opposite, where Moses goes to them, but here it talks about in the book, they go to him. So let's see, and then 6, and he just tells them, and he said unto Moses, I, thy father-in-law, Jethro, am come into thee, and thy wife, and her 2 sons with her. So the next section is God's deliverance. So basically 7 through 12, we're going to look at this, and this is kind of interesting, because Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and did the obeisance and kissed him, and they asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. So they're visiting just like any other visit. People know this kind of stuff. And Moses told his father-in-law that all the Lord had done unto Pharaoh and the Egyptian for Israel's sake, and all the travail that had come upon them by the way, and how the Lord delivered them. So he's telling them firsthand what exactly would happen. He's saying, this is what happened. And that, they're all, and then Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Egyptians. And then, these next few verses, this is what's really interesting, what's God's deliverance. Because remember, Jethro's a priest out here in Midian, but remember, he's not one of the chosen persons. He's not from the line of Abraham, because Abraham has this covenant. And remember, Abraham's children they're gonna get this land of Canaan over here, this whole section of Israel that becomes Israel. And not only that, they're the chosen people. They're the firstborn. God calls them the firstborn. God used them for history. But what's going to happen here is this. Later on in the Bible, too, we do read that it's evident for everybody should know that it's evident. Everybody, when the time comes at the last day, everybody is going to know. They should know who Jesus Christ is. And they should know who these children of Israel are. And if they don't know, really, it's because they didn't want to know, and they purposely made sure they forgot, and chances are they still know, and they just won't choose God to be their God. Really, they're just rejecting it. But nonetheless, these people, it becomes self-evident even to the priests of outsiders, to what we're going to know later on as the heathens and the Gentiles, basically, is what it kind of calls us in the New Testament. But right here it says, and Jethro said, blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who hath delivered the people from under them. So he knew that what this guy is telling them could only be from God. Like, they know it. Like, oh, you saw some crazy, incredible things that just aren't natural. Yep, that's what we saw, and God did it, and it's this God, and blah, blah, blah. And then this is what Jethro says. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. For in the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them. And that's what I kind of meant when I said in earlier chapters about the plagues, is that God was using these, he was really using what other gods were claiming to have power over. And he was showing that Moses had that power because Moses was talking to the one and only true God. So he was telling them, he was making a show that only Moses has this real God, because all your God, like for example, and I say the main one is is the sun god, and that was the ninth plague, the plague right before when everything turned dark. Everything turned really dark, and then the next plague was obviously the death of the firstborn. But when everything went dark, that was a real big. There's a god named Ra, R-A, and there's also, and I'm sure there's other gods named so many different things that consider themselves the god of the sun. But obviously, if the god of the sun was, there in Egypt, then he would have been listening to Pharaoh, and that's what Pharaoh was running around with his priests, claiming that they were descendants of such and such gods. He was trying to make himself. I mean, that was the whole thing about Pharaoh all the time, was that Pharaoh was a living god, supposedly, and that's why they worshipped him in Egypt as a living god. That was his whole deal. He was a living god, but of course, all the powers that he supposedly was claiming powers of, he was god of this, god of that, and so forth. And like I said, if you recognize the plagues, you would have known that there's like a god of the water, the god of the river, and that's why the river turned to blood. And then there's a god of some sort of a god of like cattle and stuff. So there's a god of all those things, and God was using them to, there's like a god of flies, and there's like a god of insects or something like that, and God was using these things as the different plagues, showing that, all of those gods, those, quote unquote gods that the Egyptians believed in, that had the power over animals, that had the power of water, had the power over the sun, had the power over rain, and so forth. There were, Moses was the one that came in and was saying, look, the God of this is against you, Egypt. So that's why when Jethro hears about this, and he's a priest, but that just, he's praying to God. Now he tells him, now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. So he's declaring right here. He goes, oh, I see that this whole time I'm a priest, but I see now why I'm a real priest. There are no other gods except for this one God. And because for all the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them. So like I said, that sun god Ra, supposedly that was what he dealt proudly with, was the sun. He said he controlled the sun. And so when Moses was over here telling them that the God of the sun, the one and only true God, was going to make it dark, here they were losing all credibility for any kind of godliness. They were not a God of the sun at all. Moses was speaking to the real God of the sun, and that guy wasn't even talking to Pharaoh. He was so angry with Pharaoh, and that's that was done. Look, you can see the priests outside of even the priests of the Gentiles and the heathens, which is what I would consider myself, the kinds of priests that we would have, we should know that there's only one God, and we shouldn't be pagan about it. There's only one God, and it's this God that did these things for the line of Abraham. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God, and Aaron came, and all the elders of Israel, to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. So you see, like I said, that's what it's called, God's deliverance. That even he was telling us that, look, even though God has chosen his firstborn being Israel, and he has set them apart and made them different, he's made them the people that he would show himself and reveal himself. They're his priests' people. That's what God has said. Everybody else should know that nonetheless, we should see these signs and understand that why these signs are happening and why God chose a line to begin with. He chose that line, for his own purposes, but he also chose only the one line so all the rest of us can actually pinpoint it and find it and know that, hey, this was the only real recorded stuff that went crazy throughout history. All that other stuff was a bunch of nonsense, or it had its root in these stories. But ultimately, these are the stories from the line of Abraham, these people we know as the Jews, these people of Israel. Ultimately, their God is the one and only true God. And that's who we've all heard and we've all found, and we know something out there exists, and that's where it comes from. And we should all be able to pinpoint that, because all the other ones, and my own personal experience, they just fall apart. They're not real. You can tell when you read the Bible that this is the only thing that's real. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from the morning unto evening. So now we're getting to the next couple of sections, which have to do with Moses being a judge, and then how Jethro, who being a priest, an outsider priest, kind of gives him some advice on how to run his courts. So verses 13 to 16, we're going to see Moses acting as a judge. So here he is. He sat to judge the people, and they were there all day from morning unto evening. So he didn't get nothing done except for what's going on in the courts. And so obviously Moses' father-in-law saw that he did the people and said, what is this? What are you doing to the people? Why sittest thou thyself alone? And all the people stand by thee from morning into evening. And so Moses responds and he tells them, so basically Jethro's saying, why are you doing this? This is kind of tiring, don't you think? Why are you doing this all by yourself? And Moses tells him, well, the people come to me to inquire of God. Apparently I'm just so popular. I'm the only person here talking to God, apparently. I'm the only guy here talking to God is kind of how he's putting it. And they don't want to talk to me to talk to God or to inquire of him. And so he tells them, he continues on, when they have a matter, they come unto me and I judge between them and I do. So here's the big deal is he's telling them the laws and the statutes of God during these judgments. So he's saying, okay, so some people come, and they say, I did this or he did that. And we want to know who's right because we both have a problem and we want to fight each other. So what do we do about it? And then Moses says, oh, well, you're not supposed to do this and you're not supposed to do that and so forth. And then based off that, they could say, oh, okay, so my bad. I did this. Well, yeah, well, you're not supposed to do that. Okay, my bad. Now we know not to do it again. Great. And that's kind of they were going one matter after another, one matter after to learn. And they were having to learn all his laws one by one. And only one person was doing this. And Moses was the one having to do it. And so obviously Jethro, who's an outsider who obviously, doesn't do things like this, he tells them what's going on. He gives them some advice. And that's where we get into verses 17 through 27 now. And so Jethro tells them, what you're doing is not good. The thing that thou doest is not good. And he tells them, thou wilt surely wear away both thou and this people that is with. So everybody's going to get tired doing this. No, you're just not going to get anything done. You're just going to be in court all day long for the rest of your lives, and you're all going to starve to death because everybody needs to be at court. That's the same concept. For this thing is too heavy for thee, thou art not payable. So he's recognizing that even though you speak with God and God is with you, you're still just a man, Moses. And this is too much for you. You can't listen to, you don't got enough hours in the day, and so forth. And so it really is going more into like this deliverance that God is giving, not just to the children of Israel. And of course, later on, that's kind of a big deal in Jesus's time. When Jesus comes around, basically, the Jews are kind of trying to be real. Heaven is only for us. Everybody else is bye-bye. Who cares about you guys? It's just for the Jews kind of an attitude. And this even right here, we're going back to Exodus, the second book of the Bible, never mind the New Testament. Even Exodus is showing us that the whole world is going to learn God's laws and that they're allowed to have them and so forth. So, because here he is telling them, what you got to do is he says, hearken unto my voice, I'll give thee counsel and God shall be with thee. And he tells them, be thou for the people to Godward, that thou mayest bring the causes unto God. So he tells them, what you need to do is you need to be godly. You need to be, you need to bring all the most powerful cases. Let me see. Be thou for the people to Godward, that thou mayest bring the causes unto God. So basically he's saying, you need to be focused in God, and that's what you need to do. He goes, and what you're going to do is thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws. And he goes, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk and the work so he's telling them what you got to do is you got to teach the people what the laws are and that they have to walk in these laws and you got to tell them what to do and they'll do it. He goes, you don't have to be here doing this all by yourself. You're making it all hard on yourself. You're acting like kind of putting yourself in a position of burden here to be the only person that can solve any problems in this world. He goes, what you got to do is you got to tell other people the laws of God so that, we can all walk like you, so that we can all act and know what you know, so that all of us can know what you know. And that's, like I said, this is a great, it's a perfect position that God put these people in, because this is a priest telling Moses. So this is a priest from outside that has, God hasn't even really talked to them. I mean, he's become evident in their life, and he is self-evident in everybody's life. But he hasn't spoken with these people. They don't know. That's what I'm getting at, is God hasn't officially spoken to these people or to the heathens. No, he gave us the children of Israel, and they spoke to God just like Moses spoke to God, and then Moses told the people just the same way. That's what happened with us. God hasn't really he's made himself evident in our life. Obviously, we should know and see him because he's so in everything. He does everything. He's responsible for the creation of all things. He's in every living piece of matter, so forth. But that doesn't necessarily mean he talks with us. Just like, he walks around us and he looks at us and we look at him, and, and we hear him talking to the children of Israel because he talks so loud. When he talks, everybody could hear him. But, we act like, so forth. We act all separate and so forth. But anyway, that's getting on too far of a tangent, I believe. But he is telling them through a priest that, hey, Moses, it's okay to teach everybody else the laws. You don't have to be stingy about the word of God here. You don't have to be stingy with the work of God either. You don't have to be stingy with that, bring it to the people so that we can all walk and work for the one true God. And he continues forward. Moreover, thou shalt provide all of the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, and rulers of hundreds, and rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. So he's basically saying what we know as government. You need to make a government, and you need to put good people at the head of this government, these people that fear God, these able men, men of truth, that they, good men that hate, covetousness, and these good men that are strong and able, and they fear God and are truthful, and you can trust them, and you need to make them over the rulers of thousands and rulers of hundreds, so you didn't make a government. You didn't make generals. You need to make captains. You need to make lieutenants. You need to make sergeants, so forth, and in whatever way you want to think of those. And let them judge the people at all seasons. And it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto thee, but every small matter they shall judge, so shall it be easier for thyself, and they shall bear the burden with thee. So here he's saying, see, if you have everybody working the law of God, then all these people will have their permanent jobs as judges and so forth, and whatever they can't solve, they'll bring to you to speak directly to God, because whatever we can't handle, God will come in, and that's where God will show himself what we should do. If you remember for example, the last chapter, the Rock of Horeb, they were lacking water. All they had to do is, once they were at that point to where there's absolutely no water, they all thought they were going to die. God provided what wasn't there. And so in the same matter, these people should be able to do everything that they need for themselves, and what isn't there, suddenly God shall provide. And so they should know, hey, this isn't there, Lord. Take it to Moses and tell Moses that this isn't there, and God knows it, and God shall provide it, and so forth. And let's see, keep going on. And if thou shalt do this thing, and God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure, and all this people shall also go to their place in peace. So he's saying, if you had more people doing this, you'd be able to talk to God and be godly, and all these other people will be walking in God's path, and we'd all know God's law, and everybody will be able to endure better. And instead of waiting all day in court for a case that might not even make it to Moses today, you could have them go to all their separate courts, and everybody could go home tonight in peace, knowing that they got their case solved, because there was plenty of judges out there to handle these small cases. So, of course, Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. And Moses chose able men out of Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers over thousands, rulers over hundreds, rulers over fifties, and rulers of tens. And they judged the people at all seasons. So that was like their full-time job. So basically, that's what he did. He's, oh, that's a good idea, Jethro. I hear what you're saying. I got to make kind of like a little government and choose good, able men, teach them the law, and have them judge for themselves, and whatever they can't handle, they should come to me or go up the court system and so forth. So he really made like a good court system here, and they judged the people at all seasons. The hard causes they brought unto Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went on his way into his own land. And again, his own land was over back to Midian. So that was this whole visit. This whole chapter was basically a visit by Jethro, who was a priest outside of the children of Abraham, who, if you think about it, the Egyptians were claiming to be priests as well in their own matters, but they proved to be false priests or priests that did not understand. They weren't good. But this priest, on the other hand, he also was not necessarily spoken to by the one true God, but he saw what the one true God had done for the children of Israel, and seen all these people, and seen all he saw it all, and he had all his firsthand experience, or he heard all the stories, and 600, like a million people to talk with, to go through and see what they all had to say about the matter. So he definitely had his proof as an outsider priest, Jethro. And God kind of showing his favor on him, kind of basically took his advice, for the children of Israel. Moses said, I'm going to take this advice from a priest from outside of the line of outside of Abraham, God, and we're going to do this. And if you tell us it's okay, then, then I hope that's, if this thing is good and God commanded thee to do so, then you should be able to. So if it's a good thing, we're going to do that. And that's what Moses came to him. Look like, hey, we got this idea, comes from Jethro. We're going to do it. And if that's okay with you, and God seems to think that's perfectly okay. It was perfect. Like I said, it was perfect. It was from a priest outside of the line of Abraham. So all priests outside of this line should ultimately, at the end of the day, all see and make it evident. So why there's, priests of other religions, those people should all know what happened, and they should understand, and they should have no excuses, because they're going to have the curses of the plagues of the Egyptians are going to eventually fall on the priests and the people that do not understand and do not worship the proper God. That's just what's going to happen, and it should be proof and evident. And I know I feel like I've seen that in my life, obviously, and obviously I'd have to, you'd have to reflect, but that's what's going on, and that's what will go on, and that's what should be going on. These priests, anyone who claims to be a priest, you should all understand and make it it should become pretty self-evident that there's only one God. So anyway, that was Exodus 18. I'm going to go ahead and end this video right here. What is it? Once again, Exodus 18, just to kind of go over it again. Once again, we saw the visit by Jethro in verses 1 through 6. We saw God's deliverance in verses 7 through 12, and we saw Moses acts as judge from 13 through 16. In verses 17 through 27, we saw that good advice from Jethro. So ultimately what happened was that Jethro comes by, and he brings Moses' children and his wife to Moses, and not like that fake Hollywood stuff where Moses went to them, okay? And remember, and then on top of that, remember that after that all happened, Jethro hears about all, the experience of these children of Israel, and he he loves it, and he realizes what God did, and what he did was use these, the power of the so-called power of the false gods against them, to show them that all their beliefs were wrong, and this one God was the only one that had any real power or had any power at all. So God has made it evident that he is the one and only God, and that there are no other gods besides him. And it should be evident for all priests out there. It should be evident for all priests, regardless of their so-called religion. So, like I said, I'll go ahead and end this video here. So I'll say, for anyone who's watching, if you like what I'm doing, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for future chapter by chapter Bible study. Obviously, I'm into Exodus 18, and God has filled me with the Spirit to continue doing more of them. So if you're watching this, God bless you, and I pray that we all, I bless you in the name of Jesus Christ, and may we all bless Jesus Christ, and may Jesus Christ bless all of us. Amen.